All right. Ready for calls?
Yeah. Let's do this.
Christian in Cedar Park, right in our hometown. Did we just talk to you recently?
Yeah, I called in last week, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Nice to talk to you again.
Hey, good to talk to you. I've been thinking that for me, that religion supplies something that I feel is kind of essential that I can't get anywhere else.
Okay,
and
what is it?
And I also relate to, although I'm a Christian, I relate to other religions, and I get, it's almost like I get some kind of satisfaction from observing there, or even sometimes participating in what they do.
So would that include Islam? I'm just curious, since we just finished talking about it.
It would, yeah. Like I relate to certain aspects of Islam, like their devotion and their seriousness about their religion, definitely.
Okay.
Okay.
So what is that thing?
I don't know what it is, but I mean, it's obviously it's very prevalent around the planet.
Well, I mean, you said there's a thing that you consider essential that religion provides you that nothing else does, and so what would that be?
Okay, well, that's what I'm saying, though. I'm not sure exactly what you call it. I just know that I'm drawn to participate in religion, and when I participate in it, I feel fulfilled. If I go too long without doing it, I feel a lack, and I want to go back to it. Mm-hmm. And I relate to people people's stories of people who have found religion, who weren't religious, and what it is that they say drew them into it. And I relate to people, what they say about why it's fulfilling to them, whether it's prayer or being in rituals or services or whatever it is.
Well, Christian, I mean, I haven't lived your experience, but on the other hand, you haven't lived mine.
Sure.
So do you think that you could tell me that there is absolutely some sort of fulfillment or happiness that I'm missing out on in my life because I don't have this religious thing of yours?
Well, I have at least one associate, a friend, who does not listen to music.
Okay.
Meaning he doesn't own any music, and he doesn't have any groups or types that he buys music that he likes or anything like that.
Sure.
I would say it's something close to that. I would say either, I'm not saying that there's something wrong with him, although I'm willing to bet that he could find a whole other type of fulfillment if he made more of an effort with music. But even if that is not true, even if he's just different to the extent that he doesn't need it, or it doesn't do anything for him, I still think that it's a important. That doesn't change that music is a very important, and I would say an essential part of our experience.
Yeah, but I mean, it's interesting you bring up that example, because I do recall reading something not long ago about the way there are some people out there who just, whatever it is in our brains that hears the music and then translates that into kind of emotional experiences that are personal to us. And there are some people who just don't have that module in their heads. And so, so while to us, if we didn't have, if we're music lovers and we didn't have the music, that would be this terrible, hole in our existence. For those people, it's not, it's just not something that they miss because they didn't, you can't miss what you never really had in the first place. Now, whether or not it's just, there's something wrong with them, or just a case of, they're being wired differently. Who knows? But But I want to get back to just sort of the way you described, what it is you get out of religion, and I can certainly understand that sense. One thing that I think religion is very successful at has been, for example, fostering a sense of community among people. It's bringing groups of folks together, and that's been something that, indeed, I think there are certain people in the atheist community who are kind of adopting that kind of blueprint. There are two groups of atheists, basically. There are people who are lifelong, and but then there, I think, is a much larger group, and those would be people who were raised religious and were brought up in a church environment, but who have since lost their faith and given up on religion. But one thing that you may kind of miss is, but I really kind of enjoy going to church and meeting all those folks. So now what's happened is that those folks are finding a lot of appeal in what they're calling Sunday assemblies, where you just where people are getting together and just hanging out in something that is kind of follows the church model, but it's secular. So there is something to be said about, for example, that sense of belonging and community. But something else you described in terms about, in terms of, well, here's something that's special to me. When I miss it, I really miss it. When I come back to it, I feel that renewed sense of fulfillment. I can think of a great many things that generate those feelings in me, right? Whether it's, there's, like I mentioned, there's an annual film festival that I go to that always kind of feels like coming home. There are just hobbies that I'm part of that are, even if it's just things in my spare time. When I have the chance to just sit down and do those things, just this sense of peace washes over me, and I feel great. So I think that there are lots of ways to get that general sense. It may not be, for example, my sense of fulfillment from the things I like might not entirely map to the kind of fulfillment you feel when you partake in your religion, but it's still there. It can be experienced by different people in different ways.
Okay, well, let me say something real quick, and partly to answer what Russell's first saying about, can you tell me that I'm missing out on something, or et cetera. Well, first of all, briefly, I understand what you're saying about those gatherings of people, and you have things that you do, and if you enjoy them, then you're going to miss them later. And I understand that, and I'm taking all that into account when I say that for religion, I mean, I have things that I'm involved in, social things. I have hobbies and interests, and I have a circle of friends that are religious and not religious and atheists, etc. But I'm not talking about getting together with people. I'm talking about things that are more exclusive to religion, like the idea of something that's sacred, reverence, that kind of thing.
Yeah, on the flip side, I mean, I'm one of those people who's never been religious, so if there's something that I'm missing, then I haven't experienced it. But
sure.
I have talked to a number of people who used to be religious and are now atheists, and by the same token, they have told me that there was a really exciting shift in their minds when they abandoned the idea of God. That a lot of them were like, really, I don't have to live by the dictates of some absolute rules anymore, and all of a sudden the things that have been true, I've assumed that it were true all my life. I'm now free to dismiss and actually get into things like science and seriously trust the kinds of answers that actual reason and evidence lead me to.
I think it all comes down to.
I really wanted to say, I had something I wanted to say about that. So you said that you had not had that experience.
True.
Okay. And what I'm saying is that I think that if you did have that experience, and I also relate to what you're saying about people getting the sense of fulfillment from getting away from religion. And you're talking about people not being able to be interested in science, but they're considered it goes against their religion, or people, the idea of being free of the dictates of whatever. I can relate to that too, and I can understand how there would be fulfillment in that in a completely different way. But when I say religion, I'm saying that if I were able to show you what that experience is like that you have not had, and if I were able to go about it in such a way as to introduce you, I think sometimes like some of these ideas, they obviously take hold easier on younger people and people whose outlooks have not been completely formed. Yeah, they do.
Give me the child
and
for 7 years.
to a lot of our experiences as human beings, like learning language and that kind of thing. And,
right. I mean, we would refer to that as indoctrination.
Yeah, and it is indoctrination. But I think that there's things about it that are good. And I think that, yes, I do think I can confidently tell you that if you could get the full experience, I think that you would think that you were missing something.
Well, let me let me go ahead and address this because, like I said, Russell, is a lifelong, but I was someone who grew up in church, and I'll be the first to tell you that I have pretty much no bad or negative memories of that experience. I'm for the most part, my memories of those years, pretty much I think it went up to when I was maybe about 14-ish. Adolescence, Pretty much all, I remember a lot of those days fondly. I remember all the things we used to do with the youth group, and choir was kind of cheesy, but there was still the youth activities that took place in the rec room at the church and all of this, and I liked our church. It was a cool place, and so yeah, I have nothing but generally positive memories of those years. But the enjoyment that I recall from the various things that I did when I was a church-going youth and all those good memories, et cetera, to me ultimately take a back seat to the decision I made that it mattered to me whether or not what I believed was actually true. Sure. And now I will admit that there were some elements. This would have been at the time when like the moral majority was coming to the rise, and so there were some kind of factions in like American religious fundamentalism that were coming to the fore in the Reagan years, and so that probably informed a lot of my, the distaste that I started feeling for Christianity, which again probably ushered me along the path to abandoning the whole thing. But it wasn't really that strong because I knew that it was still like, yeah, but there's cool people and our church is great, and and I like the basketball court and all that. So it really came down to, yes, I have all these fond memories. I remember some people who were really great, good times. But at the end of the day, none of that has anything to do with, do I really believe that what is being preached to me from the pulpit, what the message of this religion is? Do I believe any of that's true? Do I believe there's a God? And at the end of the day, I have to say, well, no, I really don't. And so this isn't for me. Although I knew that there were good bits and there's stuff that I recall very fondly, it was ultimately I had to kind of go a different way. And I don't.
Say one last thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I just wanted to say that, it doesn't. It doesn't take hold of everybody, and that's true. And if there's not enough of something you're getting from it to say, well, I'm going to put these doubts aside for now, then you're not getting enough of that from it. But I would like to say that I think that people should take into account when they're considering it from an intellectual perspective that the fact that religion has spontaneously emerged in culture so often, and it's from my understanding pretty much almost to every example in just about every culture.
That's a little bit of an overgeneralization, since the kind of religion that you're talking about has very little to do with, let's say, Chinese ancestor worship.
I don't think it does at all. I think that it's very much related.
Well,
I mean, you want to claim credit for every single thing, every single set of superstitions being identical.
No, I think it's superstition.
There may be, to whatever degree there's such a thing as, natural religion where people tend to gravitate towards these ideas. I don't know that I'm entirely convinced by that. The fact is, whether or not there is any sort of spontaneous a way in which a religion arises initially in a culture, the fact is that the religions that we have today are the result of centuries of politics and wrangling and wars and various conflicts and
what about tribal religions
and this institutionalization. Well, still, my question at the end of the day with tribal religions would be, in a case like this, are these simply people who are ignorant of the actual facts of the world and looking at what they see and just interpreting it through the limited knowledge that they do have? And there's no mystery to that.
And the answer is right there. The answer is, well, if they were to have more education and more awareness and see the whole world, would they stop being religious? And the answer is, for most people, clearly no. They keep being religious.
Well, it's for many people it's no, but at the same time, look at what has happened to religion in the face of all of this increase of knowledge. People have not necessarily given up the religion because, again, to many of them there is this kind of emotional connection that's important. But look, for example, at the way Christianity has changed as scientific knowledge down the centuries has increased. Christianity has simply found ways to absorb a scientific discovery, or it just comes out and fights it and resists it tooth and nail. For example, the case with the current evolution battle. But then later on you have the Catholic Church 500 years after the fact apologizing
300.
for 300,
Well, that's
whatever.
in its favor. I would say that's in its favor.
Apologizing for what they did to to Galileo.
Sure.
But
And that adaptability is in its favor, and I would say.
well, I don't know that it's really adaptability, because I think I think that I'm not entirely convinced that the church's apology was motivated by this grand revelation that there's a willingness to admit that the church was wrong and Galileo was right.
The fact that 300 years later they admitted error doesn't imply that they were adaptable. It implies that they were in error, and sooner or later it was inevitable that they could continue maintaining these preposterous beliefs without becoming basically a laughing stock. I mean,
But it is an adaptation. That is an adaptation.
Eventually, but I mean, another thing that often happens to religions is they just die out. I mean, you don't see a lot of believers in the Greek pantheon anymore. Even though
Sweden,
it seems like you would say that that's all of the same cloth as Christianity.
I think it's very similar, but I think in Sweden, where atheism,
I think it's
had a
similar
very good
too.
run, in Sweden, the majority of the people believe in some type of transcendental force reality. I mean, according to the Wikipedia
I'm not
survey.
sure that's true.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pretty. They have this thing they always use, like on Wikipedia. Whenever you read about a country, they always have religious beliefs, and there's a specific survey they
I'm
use.
pretty sure Sweden is like one of the most
Yeah,
secular
pretty
countries
secular.
in the world.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Sweden
They
is
are
still
one of the
good.
most secular countries. That's
Yeah.
what I'm. That's the whole point of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well,
That's your golden boy right there of secularism, and you still have the majority of the people. You can look it up right now. Somebody in the studio to look it up. The majority of the people believe in some type of transcendental guiding force or whatever.
Okay,
it won't go away. It doesn't seem to want to go away.
But I mean, you're basically throwing a textbook example. I mean, even if that's true, it's an example of an appeal to popularity, which is a common fallacy. I mean, the fact that a lot of people believe something does not in itself make it correct, right?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not appealing to popularity, and I'm not saying that makes it correct. I'm not even
Okay.
implying that it may be correct. I'm saying
okay.
the fact that it won't go away shows you how much of a intrinsic thing it is and how it fulfills a need.
But the fact that it's intrinsic, does that make it good? I mean, let's say that it is
That's another issue.
Let's say, for example, that it is a unique experience that I will never have because I'm not religious. There are a lot of other
Right.
things I don't do. I am not a regular drug user. I've never taken LSD. And a lot of people have told me that the experience of taking LSD is unlike anything else they've experienced before. But
Well,
that
I'll tell
doesn't.
you that as well.
Yeah,
I'll second
okay.
that.
But does that mean that I should fill in that void in my life by taking a lot of LSD?
If you have any courage, you probably would.
Okay, I do not agree with that.
Yeah, no, I can't.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, see, this is where I think the difference in just our general approach is coming to the fore. It all comes down to whether or not, it's Matt's famous quote. In life I would prefer to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. You're never going to be 100%, on your scorecard for that, but you can do your best. And I think that it all came down to the fact that those of us, at least here, who identify as atheists, decided at a certain point that it really, really did matter whether or not what we believed was actually true. Not whether it just gave us, the warm fuzzies or some kind of fulfillment. It really did matter whether it was true, or at least that it had been proved, or at least backed up with enough evidence that we felt comfortable accepting it into our, map of the world, as in terms of what we believe about how the world works.
Does everything that you encounter have to breach that brick wall of a litmus test before you can experience it and engage in it?
Like, do I want to make sure that something that if somebody presents me with an idea, are you asking me, do I want to make sure that there is any validity to that idea before I accept it? Yes.
I'm just saying.
me too.
Yeah. No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, do you have to make that the essential and first question before you can start getting deeper into it and experiencing it?
Yes.
Yes. Is something true versus is it not true? Is it more likely to be true than otherwise?
you
Yes.
can hold that
Because
question
there
off to the
are
side.
a whole lot
So
of
hold that
things
question
that
off
people
to the
believe
side
in the
and
world.
Continue to answer it. You
What?
can keep that question there and continue to address it and go back to it.
Yeah,
You
but
don't
there
have
are
to be like-
lots and lots of things to believe and experience in the world, and I think that I'm not running out of things by filtering out stuff that is probably fake.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Well,
it's
I'm
a.
not- but I didn't say anything about anything being. I didn't say anything
Well,
about
yeah,
something
because
that
I'm getting the impression that you don't care that much about whether it's got validity, but we do. That is
I
a
mean,
primal.
That's the
primal
separator
importance
between
to
us here. You know,
Well, do you have a problem with children? Do you have a problem with children getting into a story and playing with the idea that maybe it's real when it's make-believe?
Yeah, but there, I know people in the science fiction and comics world who do cosplay. They enjoy
I'm not talking about adults.
They enjoy doing it, but they understand it's make believe. They get,
But
but
I'm
they
not,
still.
yes, of course. I'm not
Yeah.
talking about adults. I'm talking about when you read a 4-year-old a fairy tale. There's an age at which, as children get older, the line is blurred. Do you think
That's
that's
true,
messed
but
up? You
by
don't
the
take
time
that.
my son was 4 years old, I was already doing exercises with him to distinguish between fantasy and reality.
That's
'Cause
depressing.
And,
I think
I'm
that
sorry
should be
you think
child
so.
abuse.
Well, yeah, because it's the point about, you know, you're bringing up children, but the point is, yeah, by the time someone is an adult, we do expect them to have given
Gotten
that up.
over it.
Yes, we do expect them
Right,
to
and
have
I'm
stopped
not saying
believing
to be
in
like
Santa.
That. I'm not saying to be like a child. That's not what I'm saying.
Well, then
I'm
why
saying that-
why bring your kids up then? I mean, yes, there's a certain point in
Well, I
childhood.
mean, it's like when if you go out and you start asking yourself, you go out to 6th Street or you go out with your friends and you start asking yourself, if you keep asking yourself every 5 seconds, am I having a good time? Is this a good time? Am I having a good time? Can I rationally say that this is there a logical fallacy in my reason for why this
that's
is a good time?
apples and oranges, man. That's
Yeah,
not,
I don't
mean, you,
see
you,
why I would need to constantly poll myself on something that I've already acknowledged.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
this
no,
is
but each
fun,
time it's
and
a
I've
new
had
experience.
experiences with fun before.
Yeah. Well, but I'm saying you don't. In other words, when you're trying to decide, I didn't bring in any supernatural ideas about religion.
but
I'm saying,
But that's what religion is.
yeah, religion
first
is
and foremost.
supernaturalism.
I'm
That
not saying that
Christianity.
religions don't have supernatural elements.
They're
I'm just
primarily supernatural evidence.
compartmentalizing
That's what makes
the
them religion.
discussion, this part of the discussion.
Yeah, but you have to understand that to us, that's the aspect of it that we want to address. We care about whether or not the religions make
And
truth
I
claims
appreciate that.
about
And
the
I care
world.
about whether it's true as well. That's
Yes.
important to me as well.
Wait a
and I
minute,
think Christianity
you
is
just
true.
chided us for considing that to be an important element.
Yeah, you said it was
No,
horrible.
So
what I
why,
did
so
to
why
my
suddenly
son.
it's important?
I'm just saying to take a
depressing.
second. I'm saying in various ways of approaching an issue, that one way that you can have a discussion about religion is to not get into the supernatural aspect of it at first. I'm talking about other aspects of it that I'm saying are fulfilling without the supernatural aspect.
But yes, we acknowledge that church socials are fun.
No,
you
not
know, and things
social.
like
I'm
that.
talking about rituals. I'm talking about having ideas about things that are sacred. I'm talking about moral absolutes. I'm
Okay.
talking about not just people getting together.
Hey.
I'm
Yeah,
talking about
and those are all ideas that we would look at and say, are they valid, are they true, or are they not? We would, those are all things that religions,
Well, what if,
we
what if
don't
you were to
ignore
get
them.
Caught up in it? What if you were to get caught up in it?
Well,
That doesn't make it valuable.
Yeah,
and I
that
think
doesn't-
that
it doesn't
I
make
think
it valuable?
Christian. I think we've been going
Okay,
in
so you
circles.
find something
Christian,
that you're
hey,
passionate
Christian,
about.
Christian.
You find something
I
that you're
think
passionate
okay.
getting caught up in
Call
something
back
doesn't
next
mean
week.
that you have discovered truth. It just means
Right.
that you have become fanatical. Okay, and devotion and the level of intensity that you believe something does not make the belief true. Getting caught up in something, I would say, is a red flag.
Absolutely.
That's an app, so yeah.
Okay.